Hey there, everyone. Welcome, welcome. So glad you are tuning in for this Where Are They Now episode. Today, I have with me the wonderful Cheri Kreider. And Cheri, I am so stoked to be reconnecting with you here today. Welcome, welcome. It's good to see you.
You too, Rachel. I'm so thrilled to be here. This is a big day.
It is a big day. Yes, we were talking a little bit before we started about how this day, exactly this day, October 14th, really means a lot for many reasons. Can you say a little something about that?
Well, it was exactly 3 years ago today that you and I started doing Beyond Surviving.
Yeah.
And I was part of a group of 4 women that met with you every week on the phone. And we did this work together and made it through the whole program, and it was life changing. So for me to be here today, 3 years later, I look at how much my life has changed. And I'm so incredibly grateful for Beyond Surviving and you.
Oh my gosh, thank you. I adore you. And I think it's just such a wonderful gift of the universe that we're here today, exactly as you say, 3 whole years. And that's a significant amount of time. One of the things that I really set out to do when I started Beyond Surviving was to create something that really led to lasting change. I had been in my own journey, through so many things that it's stuck for a second. And then I was right back into my old patterns and trauma and falling apart again. And so to sit here with you today, 3 years later, and to see all the ways that your life has evolved, which you're going to be sharing about and talking about, and the ways that Beyond Surviving has really continued to play a part in that. Before we get to today, let's go ahead and go back to that time in 2017. Can you share with us just a little bit about what you were feeling, experiencing, what was going on for you back then?
Yeah. So I remember coming in just a hot mess. It had been 37 years since my victimization and my assaults and such, and I had not talked to anybody about it. I was full of shame. I was full of self-hatred. I was medicating with drugs and alcohol and food. I was just exhausted as a person, I was plagued with nightmares. I cried all the time. I was overweight and had chronic pain. I was obsessed with suicide, and my relationships were pretty much all abusive. I didn't know what a healthy relationship really looked like. I didn't trust anyone. I was afraid of pretty much everything, constantly looking over my shoulder for fear that my abusers were still after me. I basically just felt like abandoned and rejected and judged by the world. I had tried everything by the time I got to you. I had done therapy for decades. I had done numerous 12-step programs, every church I could find. Nothing worked for me. Like you said, nothing stuck. Nothing really reached the inside of me, and I was just hopeless. But you asked one question that summarized where I was at. You asked me, are you stuck?
Mm.
And boy, was I ever.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wow, thank you for sharing. As you talk about, I can feel my body just contracting, under the weight of all of those things. It was this, and it was this, and it was this, and it was this. And how about that too? How about a little smidge of that? It was just, and I, of course, remember being in that place in my own process and my own journey, and just dying for something, to come along and help me exactly that, get unstuck. That deep feeling of this feels a little unchangeable, this feels a little immovable. Yeah. And so when you think about that moment of kind of taking this leap of faith, okay, I'm going to jump into this work. And, for all intents and purposes, we talked, of course, and had a conversation. But I was in many ways a stranger. And not only that, jumping into the group program space, right? And walking along with other women who you're day one, say it again.
They were strangers.
Strangers. Yeah, exactly. And I mean, this is one of the moments where I'm like, people who've experienced trauma are really badass at the end of the day. Like the things that we can find it within ourselves to do, in the name of like me, really, at the end of the day, like this is for me, it's about me, and I'm going to do it. Was there anything that you did, though, if you think back to that time, that kind of helped you get over any hurdles of like fear or anxiety about starting the program, particularly stepping into the group program?
Well, I remember initially our first maybe meeting or two with the other women. You were really gentle in how you presented the dynamics, like you had guidelines and boundaries, and like you had everything figured out that created a safe place for us. And the introductions that we did were, you didn't ask us to tell our story. You didn't ask us to identify where we lived. Like you had factors built in that helped me to feel like, okay, at any point, if I needed to, I could walk away from this safe, right? But at the same time, I wanted the solution. And I knew that there were other women in the world. God knows I saw walking zombies like I was all around me, but I didn't know. I didn't know how to help them. I certainly didn't know how to help myself. And you created that safe place for us to all walk in and slowly get to know one another. And it was a beautiful thing. And the benefits were far reaching.
Thank you. That's nice to hear, right? Because I sometimes wonder, like, well, what is it that, is going on that's making that possible? A little bit of fortitude, a little bit of bravery, structure, container. Yeah, I think that background in education for me comes into play, kind of thinking about all of that. And ultimately that, the Beyond Surviving program is a little bit of a curriculum. And, what's interesting is I've been doing this work now since 2007. So going on at the time of this recording, about 14, 15 years. And what's really true is some people come into Beyond Surviving and it doesn't fit for them. Like that structure, the curriculum, the kind of step-by-step process. They want something a little more loosey-goosey is what I call it. But one of the reasons why I developed that structure is, first of all, that's just how my brain works, right, Cheri? Like that's just how I'm built.
Yep.
And I really have paid a lot of attention to like what we need to do when in the process of healing, with the goal of maximizing healing and minimizing re-traumatization. So as you came into this, which is very different from therapy, right? This scene, this scenario, this process, what did you find most appealing about that for you? Like this kind of coaching structure, step-by-step curriculum approach to healing. What ultimately do you think, how did that serve you? What were the benefits of that for you?
Well, I really liked that it started out by helping me to learn about my brain. I knew I'd been traumatized. I knew it went on for years, but I didn't know what it did to me. And I came in feeling like my brain was constantly betraying me. That there was something wrong with me and I couldn't put my finger on it. And so understanding how the brain is affected by trauma was super helpful to me, to learn that my brain was continuing to do what it was supposed to do to keep me safe, but that trauma had basically injured my brain. And that just like if I had injured my arm, I would take the steps and go to the hospital and all that stuff, fix my arm. You said that we could fix our brains and that this curriculum would do that. And so it gave me step-by-step measurable action to take to begin to heal my brain injury. And that was, it was hard, but it was gentle. It was hard to look at, but super revealing. Like I started to learn about me and why Cheri acted the way she did, why she responded to the things that she experienced the way she did. And it was just like, I began to have hope. There were questions asked like, do you think it's possible to heal? And of course, I was filled with negativity. I couldn't answer that. But you said,
yeah,
we can begin to explore what healing looks like for you together. And that was helpful because you weren't negative like I was. And I started like listening and realizing she has hope for me. Maybe I can get hope for me.
Mm.
And
Hell
so
yeah.
even when I
Love
couldn't
that.
believe, I believed that you believed.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
also like you asked us like, really, why do you want to do this work?
Mhm.
What are you going to lose and what are you going to gain? And
Mm.
when I started looking at that on paper, I realized that I had a lot of crap to lose and everything to gain.
Mm.
And so I developed this vision of what a life could really look like for me that was healthy and safe and powerful and fulfilling and exciting. And that
And
became
then
the
you went out and did it, girlfriend. I mean, you
kind of
are
did it.
doing it in spades, in spades, in spades.
Yeah.
So, talk with me a little bit about life today. What are you up to? What's new? What's happening?
Oh my God. Well, first of all, I look at my life. I hear people talk about stress in their lives, and I look around and I go, am I stressed or am I just really busy?
Mm.
The fact of the matter is that my life is really peaceful today. Like, I love my life. Never thought I could say that, but I can today. I love the life I have. It's everything and more than I ever dreamt it could be. Like, I'm in control of my emotions. I don't ride that roller coaster anymore. I stopped crying. I used to cry all the time. I don't remember the last time I cried painful tears.
Mm.
I cry a lot of happy tears, but I don't do that
Right
anymore.
on. Yeah.
Today I can sleep. My sleep is restorative. I'm not plagued by nightmares anymore that invade my days for days at a time. I'm I don't use substances anymore. I don't need them. It's just like my whole life is much more healthy. I've lost 40 pounds and I actually feel like I do. I value myself and I'm able to show other people how to value me. And my relationships, like, girl, I know how to establish boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
I know how
Mm-hmm.
to create choices for myself when they're not being offered. And I'm part of a lot of successful collaborations these days. I have a career I never thought it would be this big, but I'm the director of outreach and mentoring for a nonprofit that supports sex trafficking survivors like me.
Yeah. Yes. I remember because I see you've experienced it. I stay in touch with my graduates. It's really hard to get rid of me. Like I do little check-ins. I want to know how things are unfolding. And I remember the moment when you sent me that email and said, "Oh, my holy moly, right? Guess what's happening in my life right now? Like I've been kind of volunteering at this organization and now I'm stepping into this role and this leadership and your organization just did this amazing campaign and you're like there on video now, you're being seen and like teaching. I'm like, look at her. And I just like I just brim with like joy and inspiration and pride in seeing that and the way that as you've come into your voice and your power, you are now standing alongside other women, in their healing. And what a beautiful thing. And we get to continue to collaborate. This is actually one of the things that I love about continuing to be in touch with my graduates is oftentimes these little partnerships start to form. And now by way of the 28-day boot camp, right, using that to support the organization. And that's really launched me into a whole nother world of like even thinking about that. Like, how can I partner with more nonprofits and doing that work? So there's been this beautiful little kind of back and forth that's happened here between us two, which I just adore and appreciate.
I don't know if I told you, but I just got contracted with the US State Department, the Bureau of Education and Cultural Affairs. They're going to send me to foreign countries to teach the embassies about human trafficking.
Come on.
I couldn't
I
believe it.
mean, as you said right before we started, I said, "Oh, you're just trying to save the world." Like legit, you're going to go and be in the world and travel. That's amazing.
I've been thinking like, okay, I'm having a local impact. I'm having a regional impact. I'm having a national impact. What about the world?
Yeah.
And this opportunity landed right in my lap as a result of a speaking event that I did in DC. And it was like,
Mm.
holy schmoly, like this is a bigger life than I ever thought was possible for me. And I could have never got here had I not dealt with those skeletons in the closet,
Mm.
those ghosts that were haunting me constantly. And they're gone now, and I'm comfortable, and I'm just, I really feel fulfilled.
Oh my goodness me. I cannot wait to see how that continues to unfold and like what else starts to happen for you as you go out into these international spaces and bring all of your unicorn uniqueness to that. This was one of my favorite moments actually in Beyond Surviving with you. It was at the moment when we did get to the step of, telling our stories and in this beautiful space where we work with declarations and kind of claiming who we are, you say, I'm a unicorn, and it has become such a like your spirit animal in some ways. And I guess what I would love to, what does that really mean for you these days? Like, how has that stayed with you? What does that really represent for you?
The unicorn is the answer to 37 years of silence. I survived, but I was stuck in silence and shame. I didn't have anybody to talk to. We didn't have language. I didn't have the skills to be able to do that. And so I had survived,
Mhm.
and it was miserable. So I didn't want to be known as a survivor. I wanted to
Mhm.
be known as somebody that could do the things that the whole world told me all that time that I could never do, I could never be. And now I'm doing those things. So I'm kind of magical and mystical like a unicorn. I'm doing all of those things. And so when you presented the concept of beyond surviving, I was like, that's exactly where I want to be. Beyond
Mhm.
this surviving. I want to thrive. I want to move from victim to victor. And that's
Mhm.
what the unicorn is.
Oh my goodness. I love that. Oh, in the 3 years that since you've done the program, and now that you're immersed more in the world, doing direct services and work, what do you think are some of the trends, some of the things that you're seeing happening, particularly in the field that you're in, working with victims of sex trafficking who are on their journey of healing and recovering and moving into places of thriving and beyond surviving? I'm just curious, like, as you have your kind of finger on the pulse of in that particular world, what are some of the things that you're noticing and seeing happening?
We finally gotten to the point, I think, with trauma survivors as a whole, that we recognize that mental health is really necessary. Okay.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of good therapists out there doing good work, but there's not nearly enough to be able to go around. And
Mm.
so a lot of times we end up with social workers and counselors who are doing good clinical work, but they really don't get how this kind of sexual trauma affects women and men, and how to help that person move from that place of, severe acute trauma to a healing journey. I mean, you have to gain trust. And what I like about facilitating boot camp for the brain with our survivors in their first 30 days of the program is that because it's very relational, because it's very relatable too, right? They start not only developing a strong relationship with me, but they develop a strong relationship with themselves.
Mhm.
They learn about what their brain is doing, how they specifically are referring, how they specifically are reacting to their trauma.
Mhm.
And so boot camp offers something that's really not in therapy. If you were to take the 28 days of boot camp and put it into a therapeutic setting, it would take years to do
Mm.
because it deals with the whole person. Boot
Yeah.
camp does it in 30 days. That person moves from acute trauma to I've got control over my emotions.
Mm.
I've got a baseline of health, and now I can start doing the therapeutic thing.
Yeah.
Now I can start doing my intensive outpatient work. Now I can start looking at other curriculum to address things like psychological coercion.
Oh my gosh, I love hearing you say that. This program is such a funny little thing because it first of all got created because, I had my one-on-one was in place and my group programs were going along, and I had a lot of like free resources like the monthly support group that I do that's drop-in donation based. And I just felt like there was this little gap, right? Because certainly a big piece for me has always been trying to make sure there are resources that meet people where they are financially and kind of across the board.
Right.
And so with that little gap, I said, okay, this program needs to step in. And my heart and intention when I started writing it, I kept thinking, this is the program that I want. Like, if people don't have anything else in their toolkit, like, this is it. You have to, like, these are the fundamentals. And if they have at least these tools, they're going to be given a good solid foundation from which they can certainly build. But at the very least, they'll have these really great skills and tools. And it's been so fascinating to watch how this program has had like starts and stops, like where it really fits, like when people are drawn to it, or when it's like, it doesn't seem to be like getting out there in the world at all. But and all of that aside, it's just like, yeah, this is the thing that I created, and that I wanted people to have that exact experience, a little bit of a bridge, and foundation for people. And it's amazing, like the nonprofits that I get to work with and I get to share this, program with, to know exactly that there's a resource that they can use within the framework of their organizations to support the people who are coming through. It's pretty fabulous. I'm really glad that we're collaborating in this way and we get to continue to work together.
Yeah. It's an amazing way to stabilize somebody quickly. That's what we do at Amira, is we offer a 30-day program where they can come in and they don't have to commit to anything long-term, just 30 days. And in that 30 days, we focus on boot camp, and I walk them through every day. And they develop that stabilization, and from there they can either go on with their lives or they can commit to our long-term program. And that's really where the rest of their healing happens. And if not, I know that if they decide to leave the program after 30 days, at least they have something that allows them to get a good night's sleep.
Right. Yeah.
Start dealing with relationships and communication skills and tools to regulate their emotions. I know they leave with that. And so it's a win-win.
Beautiful. I'm just sitting, I'm smiling, because I'm sitting here thinking, oh my goodness, if Cheri of 2017 had only known, right? Like, it's just so wild. Like, we would have never, ever guessed like that this is how life would have unfolded for you, what was really in the cards for you. And absolutely, like, your fullest, most beautiful potential, like, shining through because of the effort, the commitment that you made to yourself and the time that you put in to your healing. And what an honor to have walked alongside you in that. I love you. I adore you. It makes my heart sing. For me, I don't I don't intend to have children, biological children, but when I think about legacy, and I think about impact and how our work and our connection, and now the connection you're having with these women, and then the people in your community and now in the world, like, that just really makes me feel so good. And so proud of you for taking it on, and not shying away from what is hard work that you're doing these days, but really rewarding and satisfying, and just having such an impact. And then it starts to, like, I don't know, like, for me, you can speak to this too, like, it's a little bit of a feedback loop. Like, I notice in my work, as I watch and see others healing, like, that's healing for me. Like, it continues to feed my spirit and hope for the world, and hope that things will still, continue to get better and better. How is that for you, Cheri?
Absolutely. I mean, first of all, I'm constantly in Beyond Surviving because I'm facilitating it with our program participants. And so I'm constantly in the solution. I was actually looking at my notes from when we did this 3 years ago. And on one page, it says, I feel like I have Rachel in my back pocket. And I realized that came true through your app.
Finally made this little app for my Beyond survivors. Yes, just for my folks who are in the program. But I'm so glad to now have that layer, right? It's been, I mean, this is part of what I love about my work. It's always about intentionally improving, incremental. What can I add in next? What's the next little piece? I don't want the program to become stale or stagnant or irrelevant, right? Because things continue to change. We learn more and more. So now you have a little Beyond Surviving in, pocket app that you can pop in and check your tools and continue to connect with the resources. Because that's one thing we talked a lot about in Beyond Surviving, right? That this is not a program. It's a lifestyle. It's a way, it's a framework that we can use for mental and emotional health, spiritual health, relational health. And so just like, exercising, we need to just like, it's a kind of thing that we do for keeping ourselves healthy. Has that felt laborious to you? Because here's a question I get often, because people will say, well, if I'm still needing to, like utilize these tools, does that mean that I'm not actually healed?
Ah, I don't look at it that way. I look at it like these are my go-tos. This is how my brain now works. Okay. Like I don't like discomfort anymore. I don't tolerate that for long. I go immediately to the solution because I like to feel good. And so these are my coping skills. These are it's how my brain works today. They are the solutions from which I draw. And so, no, it's not laborious at all. And there's another aspect to this besides just the curriculum. If you remember, there were 4 of us on those calls.
Yeah.
They were strangers in the beginning, but now they've become part of my support network. We continue to stay in touch and we are there for each other no matter what life throws at us. And so it has become my life. And it's just like you would never think back to a therapy session as a solution to a problem. Right? But that doesn't fit. But these tools, like the circle of trust, for example, I couldn't trust anybody. I never learned how to trust as a child. There was too much dysfunction going on to trust anybody.
Yeah.
But in my mind, I see the circle. I know with the person that I'm looking at where they are in that circle. And therefore, I know what goes along with that. Like, okay, you're on the outer circle, so I'm not talking about this with you. It's just like it becomes part of you. And no, I don't feel at all that I am unhealed. I don't feel that this is laborious. I don't imagine walking with a toolkit. My toolkit lives in here. It's part of who I am.
Yeah.
And it's just what makes my life easy.
Oh gosh.
Comfortable.
This is a beautiful thing. When I started the group programs, that was actually where I started back in 2007. I just grabbed a few women in my church community at the time. And I went to the care pastor and said, I think I've got something here that might serve the women. And I was using a different book and kind of had some framework of Beyond Surviving, but it was still like, it was an idea. It wasn't fully formed. And these, 4 women were my guinea pigs, and like jumped into it with me. But I saw so immediately, whoa, like when we get together and we have those conversations in community, that's super powerful. And those women from 2007, they're still in touch with each other. And I just thought, okay, like, because that, one of the things that trauma does is it causes us to feel so disconnected and like we don't belong and isolated. And just as you were naming, like our capacity to build relationship, like to trust and all of these things is challenged. And so the fact that, I have graduates who like travel to see each other, right? And then they are people who are staying in touch. Like that's it, because that place of like community power, that's also, I think in many ways, the most important tool, if you will, of it all, which is that we can't go this thing alone. Like we need each other. Because life keeps throwing us challenges, things come up, but to know that there's somebody who you can always call, that's really powerful. Yeah.
We are stronger together.
Yeah.
And so it just becomes like a language, if you will, like,
Yeah.
the women that I work with, like I can say, what were the highlights of your day? And they know exactly what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Right? The
Yeah.
highlights reel. And that kind of signals to them that don't get stuck in negative thinking, because there's some good things that happen today too. Let's
Yeah.
balance it out with positive and negative. I can say buckets and they'll know, oh, I'm taking responsibility for all the crap in this situation. Nobody's completely at fault,
Yeah.
right? It's spread around, but it's our thinking that makes us think like, oh, sorry, I have to take responsibility for everything.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
buckets becomes part of the language, and Beyond Surviving has done that for us. It gave us a place to relate to each
Mm-hmm.
other and lift each other up and support one another. And it's an amazing thing.
Well, I am just so glad that we have this time today to catch up. I so appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to be here with me. And just as we start to wrap up, are there any final words? Maybe somebody who's watching this video is thinking, maybe this is my next step, but I'm feeling a little scared or unsure. Any
Sure,
words of encouragement that you'd like to offer the listeners
sure,
today?
sure. I would say to you that if you're thinking about doing this, consider it an investment in yourself, that you get out of it what you put into it, and that there's not a lot of investment of time to do this. You can do this in a short period of time, and you get to experience a lifetime of benefit. So it's a really good investment, and it's based on science, so it's proven effective. Rachel provides it in lots of different ways. You can get just the book. You could do the phone calls with the groups. You could do it one-on-one. And they're done at times where our days are starting to wind down and we can breathe a little bit. And that was so important to me because I was running 1,000 miles an hour back in 2017. I needed it to be done at a time where I could relax a little bit and receive it. And so you made all of that happen. And this is not a quick fix. This is not a one and done. This is a thing that you continue to walk with throughout your life, and it continues to grow into a bigger and beautiful life. And you'll always be supported. Rachel will always be there. Your infectious laughter still echoes in my mind, and it helps me to remember that I can laugh at things. I can even laugh at myself these days.
Amazing.
This is a good thing, and it's a fun thing. Like, you don't need to dread, and Rachel will help you get unstuck. So if you're thinking about it, take that leap of faith, because you're worth it and it's worth it.
Cheri, thank you so much. I love you. I look forward to seeing your pictures from you around the world as you travel and continuing to collaborate with you. Thank you again so very much for being here with me today. Appreciate you.
Love you, Rachel.
Bye.
Bye.